I'd like to bring this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here.
Here. I'm here.
Can you just double check, is Anthony online or no?
Not as yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on. Mark, do we have any recognitions tonight? Okay. So, motion for the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 5th, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Chairman's report. I just wanted to thank everyone that came to the water and sewer informational meeting last week. I think we had some questions answered and probably even more questions that came up out of it, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those for you. Town manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Moving on to subcommittees, the senior tax relief subcommittee met right before this meeting. We voted to move a proposal to the ordinance subcommittee for review. What's included there is making, right now there's a state senior tax relief program and a local one. Both have their own requirements, different income levels. Some, it matters if you're married or single. Another one, it doesn't. Different credit amounts for different income amounts. What the proposal includes is having the local program mirror the state program, and that the town council each year would then review any changes that we might want to do. The state does change their income levels and their rebates annually, but the town council will have an option to either make that same change annually or not. Any other subcommittees? And you're shooting for December. Okay. Hopefully we'll have something before December. Yes. Good. There's no other subcommittees. We'll move on to new business.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Julia Rogers. She's Senior Land Protection Manager with the Housatonic Valley Association. Over the past few months, you've received some correspondence regarding the Housatonic Valley, and she'd like to present you to encourage us or extend a offer for us to join the association. Julie? Yes, please.
Good evening. Thank you so much for giving me some time here. So, and thank you for the introduction. So my name is Julia Rogers and I work for the Housatonic Valley Association. So if you're not familiar with us, we are a watershed organization and land trust working to protect the environmental health and the spectacular lands and waters that flow ultimately to the Housatonic waters. So including tributaries like the Naugatuck, the 10-mile river watersheds and others throughout the whole 2,000 square mile watershed. One of the many things that we've done in our long history as an organization is to be an advocate for and a partner with the state in the Highlands Conservation Act, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. So the Highlands Conservation Act is a federal act that was first passed in 2004, and it recognizes 4 states to include the Highlands region for their outstanding natural resources and their natural beauty. So the 4 states are parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and it supports strategic land conservation initiatives under 5 categories. So any land conservation done through the Highlands Conservation Act has to achieve one of these 5 visions. So clean drinking water, healthy forests, supporting wildlife populations and biodiversity, agriculture, as well as cultural and historic resources. So this act is administered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and historically funds have gone directly to state agencies to support land conservation. However, in 2022, this act was reauthorized, and it's the first time since 2004 that we've been able to see some new provisions within the act. One of these is that towns are now able to directly access federal Highlands Conservation Act funds for conservation in town. So if there are projects that a town is really excited about, they're able to access these funds as opposed to needing to go through the state to do that. So that's one really exciting piece. The second piece, which is again why I'm here, is that we're now able to expand the Highlands Conservation Act boundary. So in the handout that you received prior to the meeting, there was a map that showed the Highlands Conservation Act towns in orange. So that was the boundary that was originally delineated in 2004. And in looking with our federal partners and other nonprofit partners, we tried to imagine how far this boundary could expand. So really imagining what these resources are that we're trying to conserve and what fits within their original definition of the Highlands Conservation Act boundary. And Watertown seems like a natural fit. You're in close proximity to these towns that were already part of the act, and you have a lot of really similar geology and other characteristics that make it a natural fit. So there's really no drawbacks to being included within the Highlands Conservation Act region. There's no additional reporting requirements. There's nothing that it commits you to. It really gives the opportunity for someday in the future, if Watertown needed to or wanted to, you would have the ability to access federal conservation dollars. We have yet to see a drawback, and at this point we have 9 towns that have agreed that they want to be included within this boundary expansion. So in order to do so, the town has to agree that you want to be added. The federal government doesn't get to look down and say, we want these towns. You all as the local communities have to say, yes, we're excited about this. The state then reviews all of these proposals, has to agree that a town should be added to the region, and then it goes to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for final review. So it's a little bit of a process to get there, but that's what brings me in front of you today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you all have them.
Any questions, Marianne?
So we would need to take a formal vote indicating we wanted to be involved, and then we would submit that.
We've seen towns do it in 2 fashions. Some towns have had town leadership just write a letter to Commissioner Katie Dykes indicating their interest, and that is sufficient, or other towns have voted on a resolution indicating their interest. So I would leave it up to you all as the town to decide what feels most comfortable.
And Mark, you have the contact information if we directed you to write a letter.
Yes, what I anticipated is that we would present you with a resolution at the next council meeting for you to discuss and move it forward if you so choose.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Any other questions or discussions? Here.
Yeah, I had a question. You said there's no charge at all for the town to belong to the organization?
Correct. So this is deciding to be included within a federal Highlands region. So there's no charge, there's no additional reporting requirement. It's an opportunity to potentially access funds in the future. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
The chair. So the towns that you have, the ones that are highlighted yellow are already part. The ones that aren't highlighted yellow, those are the ones, those are eligible. So there's 18 of them. Of the 18, do you already have 9?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. You're halfway there.
We're halfway there. That's correct.
Awesome. Awesome.
You mentioned that we end up applying kind of through the state and the state reviews. What type of criteria does the state look at? Do they just make sure we're one of those 18 towns and then?
We've been working in close conjunction with the state. So I've showed them very similar maps to the one on your handout, and they gave us sort of the peripheral nod that they agree these towns fit. ultimately what happens at the state level will be determined. This is a new addition to this program, so we don't know for sure, but with all of our discussions, I feel fairly confident that you all would be an easy yes for the state.
Any further discussion? Okay. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is discussion regarding the city of Watertown versus the town of Watertown pending litigation. And Mark, you have a memo that you would like to discuss.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to answer some of the questions that were asked at the public meeting. This was worked through taking the comments that we received at the public meeting, and I sat with our attorney, Paul Jessel, and went over and answered some of these questions. So I'm going to read a portion of this correspondence, and it states, a variety of questions have arisen again based on the assumption that we lose the appeal. Concerning how the judgment will be resolved, following are some insights that should help explain the process. The new rates chargeable by Waterbury for water and sewer services would have required that the rates charged to the individual users in Watertown and Oakville would nearly double from their levels at the time. The purpose for not simply implementing those rates was twofold. First, to protect Watertown's challenge to those rates, and second, to protect the ratepayers from a very large rate increase. The entire amount of any judgment will be the responsibility of the ratepayers. This case is strictly about water and sewer rates payable to Waterbury, so that it is where any payment must come from. The only general fund impact resulting from this issue would be the impact on rates payable for town-owned buildings or for water and sewer services. For the same reason, all the legal and expert fees have been billed to the Water and Sewer Authority and will continue to be treated that way. Suggestions that the attorney and expert bills are chargeable to the general fund budget are simply incorrect. Any thought that the amount due and payable will be billed to any homeowner as a lump sum or as an assessment is likewise incorrect. In the event that Watertown should ultimately lose the case on appeal, there would certainly be a rate increase, but it is also possible that payment for some of the back amounts owed would be paid to Waterbury using borrowing to be paid over a long period of time, such as bonding. Again, all amounts owed would be paid for from the Water and Sewer Authority. There will not be a retroactive determination with respect to each property receiving water and sewer services, as some have stated. There is currently approximately $8 million in capital extension funds in the Water and Sewer Authority. Although the number 9 million was mentioned, that number was incorrect. In addition, in order to maintain appropriate levels of funds for unexpected expenses, 100% of those funds could not be dispersed immediately in settlement of the lawsuit. The Water and Sewer Authority is currently trying to determine an appropriate rate increase to implement in the very near future to attempt to set aside additional funds against a possible adverse decision on the appeal. In addition, over the course of the next few months, the Water and Sewer Authority, with the assistance of its rate consultant, will be studying not only the possible effects of an adverse decision, but also the needs to the water and sewer system over the next 5 to 10 years, in an effort to maintain the quality and level of service that the Watertown Oakville ratepayers have come to expect. Both the town council and to a greater extent, the Water and Sewer Authority have been kept well informed on the progress of this matter throughout its history. All major decisions regarding this matter have been fully vetted before both boards and have received unanimous support. Both boards are taking a critical look at this matter, and everyone involved is making sure that every step is taken with appropriate oversight. Additionally, there was a question regarding the audit and its and the contingent liabilities for this lawsuit. On page 70 of our audit, there is a topic that's titled contingent liabilities. The auditors are fully aware of all litigations regarding the water and sewer. This contingent liability has been deemed to be not material to the town's general fund, as this whole fund is underneath our enterprise fund. And that basically answers most of the questions that were asked at the open meeting.
Any further discussion or questions from town council at this time? Comments? Nothing?
Comments?
Jonathan,
Yes, Rachel?
this is Rachel. Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Mark, do you think it would be possible to take all of that and put it into like a Q&A form and post it on the website? It'd be really helpful to like see what the question was and then see what your answer is, because there was a lot of helpful information there, but I'd love to see it in a Q&A form, and it might be helpful for people in the town to have access to it as well.
So are you suggesting an interactive form of question and answer, or just a statement of the actual questions we've answered here?
Yeah, just a written, so just a written, the question and then underneath the answer, just like a standard Q&A.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. We will address that by putting it on the town's website as well as the water and sewer website.
Anyone else?
Jonathan, can you hear me? Anthony DeBona.
Yep.
Mark, the $8 million that we have, was that built up over time in the capital fund, the water and sewer? Was that something that's been building up over a long period of time?
That's correct. At some point, I believe in 2016, I'm not 100% on the year, that the water rates were increased, and that has been building since then.
Thank you.
Last chance. Anyone else?
I do want to say something. I know the public had expected some kind of an explanation from council members at the public meeting we held on why we voted the way we did. Why did we put people in the position of having this lawsuit? And I felt obligated to say something, but obviously that was not the night we were allowed to do so. So tonight I would like to make a statement with regard to why I personally decided that I would vote to appeal. I took 1 year's worth of water and sewer bills and I added them up, and they came to $627.86. I then figured out, given the information we have with regard to what the potential rate might be, and my bill would go to $1,824.37. And we know that there is the potential for an increase this coming year. I live in a household with just myself and my son. There's only 2 of us. The thought that I would have to pay that kind of money and know that a family with 3 or 4 would be paying even more just wasn't acceptable. I didn't feel any ratepayer should have to pay that kind of money for water and sewer. And so I did feel that was the first reason. The second reason, and probably just as important, was the fact that if we accepted that rate, Waterbury would be setting my rate. I live in Oakville. They would be setting my rate for the future. And the potential that our local water and sewer department would have to add on money to maintain our services would make the bill even higher. I just didn't feel that that was legally right. And given the history that the attorneys have told everyone and told us as council members, I felt that I was on solid ground in saying it was something that we should not accept. And for the benefit of the ratepayers, we should appeal. And that's why I supported the appeal, and I will continue to do so. Thank you.
And I just want to add 2 comments. One, some people think it was a political decision to appeal this decision. I just want to remind everyone that no one voted against it. And secondly, some of this Marianne already mentioned, but once we looked at the facts, hearing from a number of attorneys, 3, 4, 5 attorneys that were all involved, they all were in favor of an appeal. And as we all voted, that is our best step forward. As it was mentioned before, kind of the first step before it even got to real litigation. There was I wouldn't call it a judgment, but a decision that was slightly in our favor. The outcome of this litigation was not. I think most people think very strongly that the next round we will win, but obviously there's no guarantee of that. But I also, I'll repeat what Marianne said. I don't regret the decision. I will continue to support the appeal in this manner.
I wanted to make one more comment that I forgot. I think the statement that Mark read tonight, or the answers to the questions, tells the public very clearly that they're not going to get a bill for the arrears of water. If they've lived in the house for a year, they're not going to get a bill for water arrears for 4 or 5 years that someone else might have used water. There's a lot of misinformation out there about how this would be handled. And those that are spreading false information are hurting the town. They're not hurting us as individuals because we know the truth. But they're spreading false information about how this is going to be handled and why the litigation is going forward. And that's a disservice to the town and to the rest of the residents of the town.
Thank you. Last chance, anyone?
Jonathan?
Yeah. Oh, Rachel?
Can I make one other question?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, I was on the council when we voted for the appeal. I was not on the council when this started. So I'm just wondering how much the town council was aware of what water and sewer was doing and if there was a vote. I guess maybe just Mark can clarify that, because he did say the town council has been well informed, there was unanimous consent. And I didn't know if that was referring to the vote on taking the appeal, or were there votes taken at the start of the dispute with Waterbury going back to 2018?
My comments were based on what we're dealing with the appeal. I don't have that information in my mind. I would have to kind of do some research as to who took votes. I just don't know what that answer is at this moment.
Can I make a comment?
If not, I will.
How do I say this? Waterbury brought the action against us. So that didn't require us to do any voting. It only required attorneys to advise us what was occurring over the years as the litigation went forward. So did we vote to go into a lawsuit with Waterbury? No. We voted to appeal it when there was a judgment rendered, but we didn't vote to enter a lawsuit, if that's what you're asking.
And there were executive sessions related to discussions on the manner before it became a lawsuit.
And there were updates on a regular basis that we were in executive session, that we still were in the midst of litigation, but there were never any votes taken of any kind.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies everything and is what I thought was the situation.
Seeing no other comments, we'll move on. See.
I make a motion to approve an appropriation from the general fund in the amount of $994.14 to the police overtime account as reimbursement to the account for participation in the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
I make a motion to approve an appropriation from the general fund in the amount of $520 for the purchase of a microchip scanner for the Watertown Animal Control. Funds have been received through donations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I just have one. Okay.
As previous meeting, I would like to thank the anonymous donor for coming forward and helping out the dog pound.
Thank you. The only question I have is, did we not have one before? Is this like new, or are we replacing one, or getting a second, or what's the scenario?
Good evening. Yes, this will be replacing an older scanner that we have.
Thank you. You're welcome. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing an appropriation from the general fund in the amount of $9,072 for tax refunds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the tax refund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And about saying adjournment. Public comment. Anyone that would like to come and have a comment for the town council, please come forward, state your name and address. And just as a reminder, 5-minute limit.
There's some good news and bad news tonight. The good news was I'm not going to have to pay for the previous 5 years of water. That's really good news. The bad news is what Mary Ann told me, what her bill would have been if it had passed. Now, that was one of my first questions. What would the rate be? Okay, now I don't know how to figure out, because I'm not privy to a lot of the conversations that you have, but I was curious about how to figure out what the rate I would have paid during those 5 years.
I'll tell you after.
What's that? You'll tell me after?
Tell you after.
Okay, good. So basically, there's good news and bad news. The bad news would be if we lose the case, because then your number might be right. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will end public comment. Second. Have a good night.